out a little.
All right, we're officially recording, so whether or not we start actually saying anything interesting, we probably should just let everybody know who's here right now.
Yeah. So we currently have Katie McGuire, JD Bryden, and Vincent Liacona at the initial YR book club.
Absolutely.
So we are going to discuss today The Conservative Heart. And just to lay some ground rules, there's only 3 of us today, but if there are more in the future, I want us all to have a chance to speak. So I want us to all go around at least once, and then we can always ask questions later. And my other rule would be, let's not interrupt each other while we do that. I know it's hard because I'm really bad at that, so I take responsibility for my own, like a good libertarian I am.
Personal responsibility.
Yes, personal responsibility.
Which is something that comes up a lot in the book, quite frankly.
Yes.
Vincent, since this was your idea,
yes,
we might as well let you, start off and give your initial impressions of Arthur's, book. It's, your floor.
Thank you. So when I read The Conservative Heart, I was actually referred to it by JD, which I'm very glad I was. And I don't think you've read it, right, Katie?
No, I haven't.
Okay, perfect. So I'll go and kind of discuss it a little bit more in depth. So the real big idea behind it, and I think the overriding idea for me that really hit home, was that as conservatives, and I think this also applies to libertarians, we try too hard to appeal to logic. And not every voter is a logical voter, and that's not a bad thing. And we treat it as if that's a horrible thing. Mm-hmm. Libertarians especially are notorious for undermining emotion and thinking it's not the way to go. But I disagree. I think we need to appeal to emotion. And I always said that to JD, and that's why I think he recommended it to me, thankfully. And Arthur Brooks really goes into detail how we can do that, especially I really love the issue of poverty, because it's an issue that Republicans get whacked with. And not just Republicans, but libertarians, anybody who's pretty much for smaller government gets whacked with constantly. And I think the reason we get whacked with it is because we have no good answer in retort. And that's what he goes into, and that really hit home.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's something that we tend to think of it from an entrepreneurial level, from a business owner's level, and not enough from the waitresses, not enough from the person who's trying to make ends meet kind of level. And that's something that we've been painted with that brush for a long, long time. It's hurt us because we are portrayed as the party of fat cats and rich people and Wall Street executives, when that's really not what we're about. We're about having an economy that is open and free for people to get in, for people to be able to find real, self-fulfilling work. And that's something that Brooks talks about a lot in the book, is just how important work is. And I think that we are a party that wants people to be enabled to find that kind of work that fulfills them, because I don't know about you guys, but there are very few times I've felt as happy as when I've completed something, work related, anything. Like I'm a big video gamer, and when you see that accomplished, achievement unlocked thing pop up, it's fulfilling, and that's the same exact thing that you get when you do a good job at work. And we don't talk about that. We don't talk about the achievement of somebody, being able to pay off their car. We don't talk about the achievement of somebody being able to pay off their home too often. We're too worried about, I don't know, the overarching economic issues. We don't focus on the people who actually vote. We don't focus on people who actually, are affected by these tendrils of big government. And that's something that we need to change immediately, I think. Vince, when you started reading this book, I don't know about you, but something that really appealed to me was the way that was presented. There were some actual solutions, some actual ideas where we could actually do something. Changing changing the appearance of the party, changing our the narrative surrounding it. But would you say that the current political climate, given that we have a billionaire who's leading our current presidential primary, who basically puts himself, it's actually really crazy, because simultaneously he is a egotistical billionaire who is so far removed from the regular person. But at that same time, he is actually portraying himself successfully as the candidate of the little guy.
Sure.
Little Marco excluded from that. Oh my gosh! But that's something that's kind of I don't know. It's hard to really imagine. But he's done something that many of our other candidates haven't done, and that is make the appeal to people who are actually getting hit by the bad policies of our government, by the bad policies that are pushing jobs overseas, environmental regulations, stuff like that. We haven't done that job. We haven't had a candidate who's really come out and focused on the little guy in a long time. So, I mean, what do you think? What do we need to do? Having read the Conservative Heart.
That's a good question, and after reading it, really, I think one of the key things that we need to do is change the message. I think too often, and I think this just applies to every level, whether we're at the YR level like we are, or whether you're at the national level like a Donald Trump is. The key is to really change the message and to focus on not just being against something, but being for it.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, and it's hard for, I think, a conservative or a libertarian to feel like they're for something because we're against big government. But our free market solutions are for, and we forget how to introduce people to that. We forget how to tell people that we don't want to be, in your bedroom. We don't want to be anywhere around. We want to be out of it. We want you to be happy and find your own happiness.
Exactly.
And too often, I think we fall into the trap of we're only going to, cut taxes for the rich, and we don't counter that well enough. So I think the key is to counter by not only saying no, but here's the vision.
That's one of the tenets in the book is to. Man, I'm going to screw this up, but it's don't be against things, be for people.
Right.
Is one of the things that Brooks outlines. He's got a ton of these steps. Eventually, I'll find the page and take a look at that as we get further into the discussion. But I mean, that's important. And how many people, if you just walk up to them and say, "What do you think of Republicans?" They're going to say, "Oh, well, they're the party of no. They're the party of mean people
right.
who want to take things away from people.
Rich, mean people.
Yeah, rich, mean people." And that's a fair criticism, because we're so often doing that. We don't really, as you said, give a positive message why our ideas are good, and focusing on those instead of saying, no, we need to get rid of this. We need to. When you say, no, we need to eliminate the EPA, people get turned off because you have the Democrats say, hey, these people want to destroy our environment.
Exactly.
We should fight for fewer regulations by the EPA, but we need to explain better what we're doing, why the reason, not only the reasons why, but focusing on the job. If you're focusing on people losing their job, I think there's limited amounts of interest people have. They were looking for something more hopeful than that, and they want to hear, okay, so if we're going to make this trade-off, we're going to remove this regulation, and this is going to create how many more jobs, something like that. Even that is a little bit vague and unhelpful for people, because it's like, all right, so you're removing regulations on a big business. It's not helping anybody, who has a diner. That's not who you're helping. So focusing on better examples is something that we need to do.
Absolutely.
And that's something that Brooks brings up. He comes up with a lot of really good examples, and that's a huge problem with our messages, that we pick really lame examples of things. Like I remember one of the things that I just, during the 2012 election season, Rick Santorum gave this speech at the convention at the RNC about his hands and about his dad's hands and about his, like, I don't think anybody got anything out of that speech whatsoever. He was trying to tell a story about how, his family worked its way up and got things done, but it was just done in such a weird, not hopeful sort of way, as sort of focusing on, oh, America is in a downturn. Oh, we're really messed up right now. That might be the case, but we need to figure out how to bring hope as part of our message, instead of just, and that's yet again another thing that Donald Trump does, despite all of his shortcomings, of which there are millions. He talks a positive game a lot of the time, and he speaks that message to people who haven't had a lot to be positive about for a very long time.
And just before I turn it over to Katie, and I know you haven't read it, but just to talk about some of the ideas we're talking about, I want to build on what JD is talking about. There's actually a perfect example of this, and he uses Martin Luther King as the perfect example of how you can take the moral high ground with an issue that doesn't appear to have a moral basis at first, but then you see it, and of course it has a moral basis. And too often we forget that.
Of course.
And we forget that. And I love his example of capitalism has been one of the biggest drivers for equality of opportunity in the world, not just the U.S. We can look at a country like, I'm just going to use one last example, use a country like Vietnam, who was under communist dictatorship for so long and didn't grow. As soon as capitalism was introduced, coming back, it's becoming more vibrant. People want to tour there again. And it's a prime example how we have to take the moral high ground, I think, on that. Now that we're talking about it, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but I just want you to, based on what you're hearing from us in the book, what would be your thoughts on some of that? What are your own?
My dad was telling me about this email that he got that's like circulating, like with the Trump analogy.
Sure.
Maybe you've gotten it, but like you're away on vacation and you come back from vacation and your whole basement is filled with raccoons, and all that you want is just to get rid of these raccoons. So you call this guy that's supposed to be really, really good at getting rid of raccoons, and he'll get the job done, but you don't care like how many wives he's had, or if you can see his butt crack through his clothes, or what he's wearing. You just know that he's going to get the job done, and he's the person that you call for that. And that's like the Trump analogy, because he's, everybody's saying all these things about him, but you know that he's like, as long as he follows the Constitution, and you know that he'll like restore this country to like what it should be, undo all the damage that has been done, like over Obama's term. I remember, like, my dad, he had lost his job back in 2008, March of 2008. One of the girls that I worked with knew that my dad was, like, he was a Republican, and he liked Bush. And she was like, how could he like Bush? It's because of Bush that your dad doesn't have a job right now. And I was like, I went home and I told that to my dad. And he was like, it's not because of Bush that I don't have a job right now. It's because, my boss didn't know how to manage his company that I don't have a job right now. But it's like people think that the Republicans are so bad that if anything is wrong with the economy, how can you stand behind your party? How can you still be a Republican and think that Republicans are making this country such a bad place? And and like there are people that do think that that Republicans are bad people. How could you and be Republican? But like all like my life growing up, my dad, the one person that was the most important to me, you know, that was like such a good and humble person. He was always a Republican, and that's like always the message I got from him. And if he could be a Republican and be a good person, then I know that Republicans are good people and they're for people. You know, and that's like always the example that I had growing up.
That's a great point, and it gets back to the whole morality as a function of the party that we don't really, you know. I guess that might be another thing to touch on here, and it's not really super talked about in the book. Certainly, religion is and all of that, but the kind of morality that the party tends to focus on, it hyper focuses on certain aspects. It hyper focuses on like gay marriage and, you know, all that stuff, when there are real moral cases that we should be making about other issues. There are many other issues that far more deserve a moral approach to them. Like we said, work is one of them, but we don't do that, and we don't bring that kind of those kind of discussions and those kinds of arguments to the you know, the forefront of the political discourse. We're content to sort of wallow in the same arguments that we've been using for a billion years, and it sucks, because then you have this situation where, you know, a lot of I don't want to really malign any particular groups or any particular people, but when you think about it, how much of the bad stuff that we've seen accompanying Trump can also be traced back to the anger that gets stoked constantly on talk radio, that gets stoked on a lot of, you know, Fox News shows. There are perfectly good reasons to be angry about the economy. There are perfectly good reasons to be angry about a lot of these things, about our porous borders. But the problem that we face is that we have gotten so angry that it prevents us from actually having a coherent argument or making a moral case, for immigration reform. I mean, I don't want to prevent people from coming into this country. I want more people to come into the country. I just want them to go the legal way. I want them to come in a way that comports with, you know, reasonable laws. I don't think that's too much of a difficult request. Plus, when we're following those rules, we have better situations. We have better for the people who are coming over the border. You know, if you're just getting if you're coming in illegally using a jackal or whatever, chances are high that somebody in your group has been or is going to be in the sex trade. You know, is going to be trafficking drugs. Is going to be, you know, some bad stuff is coming along in this process. We should make it so that it's easier for people to come in legally, so that we don't have those unintended consequences of a porous border. But we don't make that case. The case that we make is we need a wall. We need a wall that's this big and spikes on top and lasers that shoot people. We might need that wall. It's very possible that we do. But when we're presenting our case, we're so focused on presenting it to a hyper angry audience in the Republican primary. And not just the Republican primary, it seems, when you look at Trump's numbers being among independents and even Democrats who cross over in open primary states, people are legitimately angry about this. And it makes sense, because it goes back to the jobs. It goes back to jobs, and it is morally debilitating to a person when they do not have a job. It hurts them, and it's something that degrades at their being over time. Because if you don't have a job that you're working, it makes you feel worthless. It makes you feel absolutely horrible. And no one has said that. Like, no, can you think of a political candidate who said it is horrible?
No.
It is absolutely horrible to be jobless. And how many of them? Like, I'm sure somebody's got to have felt that for more than a little period of time. I mean, Marco Rubio had to have worked some job at some point that was insufferable. I mean, he talks about his parents all the time. Same with Ted Cruz. You must know how bad it is to suffer that situation where either you or somebody you love is out of a job for an extended period of time, and seeing the depression set in. And again, that's something that Arthur Brooks talks about. I know we're kind of getting away from the book itself, but
No.
Go for it.
But I can touch on actually a couple of things that both you and Katie both brought up. For one, Arthur Brooks brings up a really good example in the book, and this touches a kind of what you were going through, Katie, where I love the Andrew Luck example because, and I'll explain it. In the book, he basically says that Andrew Luck is the type of, and Andrew Luck's a quarterback for the Colts.
Oh, okay.
He's a football player. He's a football player. But one of the things he does that's very strange, and no quarterback really does it, is after he gets hit hard by like a linebacker, he'll get up and he'll be like, pat him on the butt. Nice job.
That was a good hit.
Good hit. Yeah. You really got to me. And one linebacker, I think, said something effective. I didn't know whether it hit him or hug him after that. And it threw him off guard. So, and I think the important part here is, one, we should treat the other side as if they are trying to do what's best for the country. I think too often we think we're not going to expand, influence if we don't think they're trying to help. We can just say that their ideas are highly flawed at doing that. But the other thing too is we don't give enough credit for instance, at a debate. I mean, I remember I recently heard from someone that Rand Paul looked like an angry man up there. Yeah. Instead of looking like a happy guy, like Andrew Luck does.
And you are, you're a fan of Rand Paul, right?
Oh, huge fan.
So,
but he looks like an angry man up
absolutely.
there. And that's part of the problem that I think Gary Johnson's going to face. He looks kind of angry up there again. So I think the key is to look like we're not only excited for our side, but again, we have the moral high ground on it. We're excited to tell people that. We're excited to say, you know what, Bernie Sanders is he's a respectable man, but his ideas are going to cripple us if we go through with them. And this is what we have to as an alternative to that.
Even Obama said in his State of the Union address, he was saying that he's like, there are some people that love what I've done, and there are some people that don't want anything to have to do with me. And he said that's fine. We're all we're all different. We all have different ideas, but this country is not going to work if one party is criticizing the other party.
No, I'm of a couple minds on this one, and I agree. I think that one of the keys, with the exception of certain people, I think it is the wrong method to question someone's motives. I think that we want to achieve something similar. We all want prosperity, safety, liberty for ourselves, our families, and our country.
Except maybe Hillary Clinton.
Except that was one of those situations where it's
or Donald Trump, perhaps.
Maybe it's hard to. It makes it easier to question the motives of a Hillary Clinton, but when you have such blatant issues in her background. So her character is in question. Her motives are in question. I'm not going to question Bernie Sanders' motives. He seems like a really nice guy. I disagree with him on virtually everything, possibly with the exception of I think he's been good on Second Amendment rights for some strange reason. He's from Vermont. Vermont is weird like that.
Right, supported.
But but so is Harry Reid. So, but that I agree. That's something that we have too often, and it's not just Democrats that we have problems with with motives. And one of the big big issues that I had with Rand Paul, who was one of my favorite candidates going into this election season.
Why is that?
What?
Why was that?
Why was he one of my favorites? I think that he had very good messaging on a lot of subjects, and I appreciate his stances on constitutional limits of government and protecting our constitutional freedoms when it comes to especially the right to privacy and free speech. I think that there are very few candidates who are quite as good as Rand Paul was when it comes to those kinds of issues, the free speech and privacy issues. I don't like the idea of my data being looked at just because, if you have nothing to worry about, if you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about. That is a really scary proposition to me. I don't think that sets a good precedent that everybody's dirty laundry can be accessed by NSA agents for whatever reason. I just don't like that as from a principle standpoint. And I liked Rand Paul because he stood against those additional infringements on our privacy. But one of the reasons that he lost me over the course of the summer was he went out and questioned the oh my goodness, I just lost my train of thought entirely. Questioned the motives of his fellow senators, saying, do they really want to keep you safe? Do they, or whatever it was like, they would be happier if there was a terrorist attack or something like that. It was really, it did not become a statesman, and it certainly was not something that helped him at all build a coalition among Republicans.
You lose the moral argument at that point.
Absolutely.
It's gone at that point because you can't make that argument any longer. You now look like the guy who's just anti. And again, Brooks talks about this quite a bit. You look like the person who's running a campaign that's anti, against, which is great. That's how the hippies started. That's how a lot of groups started.
Right.
But you have to do what Martin Luther King did, and take that anti and turn it into a positive. And this is why it's morally right. And that's what Rand did wrong, in my view. I agree.
Yeah. It's skipping ahead a lot in the book, but something that I'm particularly passionate about when it comes to this book is the idea of going where you're not expected, going where you're not wanted. I think is what he says, but I think expected is a better terminology for it because there's a negative connotation, I think, with not being wanted someplace.
Yes.
I mean, technically, we're in a Starbucks. We're a bunch of young Republicans who are talking in a Starbucks right now.
And enjoying our drinks.
Yes, absolutely. In capitalism incarnate. I mean, it doesn't get much more capitalism than Starbucks. But go where you're not expected is something that I think is a huge boon to anybody who wants to seriously expand their reach as a influencer, as somebody who wants to craft policy or even have an effect on this community. You have to go and talk to all sorts of different kind of people and go to all sorts of different places in order to accomplish that. And it's not something that we do very, very well as a party. It's something where we, with few exceptions, like actually Rand Paul, Paul Ryan, to name a few. There's some other people who have done it, but we don't really go to inner cities. We don't go into areas where we aren't greeted by hundreds of adoring suit and tie clad Republican buddies. Like how often have you guys been to a Republican event at a park in Newark? It doesn't happen. It never happens.
Excuse me, JD. I just want to. And on that note, though, I'll let JD finish. But for all the people listening in, we welcome all political viewpoints. I don't care if you're a hardcore leftist, if you're a hardcore right libertarian, doesn't matter to us. We want all viewpoints for precisely that reason.
Yes.
If we can't defend their viewpoints, then we probably should rethink those viewpoints.
Agreed. Stipulation. That's to the book club. That's to the book club.
We welcome you to the YRs if you were thinking of converting over as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, our bylaws are sticky like that.
Yes.
Require that you have to be a registered Republican.
But yes, for the book club.
For the book club, for sure. No, but I agree. I mean, I would love to have people with some opposite viewpoints of mine. Just within our club itself, we have some pretty diverse viewpoints. I mean, between John and Catherine, there's a whole host of differences, and between me and John, between you and me, Vincent, and that's we're probably very close on a lot of things, but I might be a little bit more flexible in what I'm able to tolerate in terms of moderation. I don't know. It could be. It might not be.
I think you're probably right.
Probably, but we divide way too easily. We divide far too easily, and it makes things not just within a party, but as people, we are not able to. We go and polarize on party lines, on whatever lines, far too rapidly, and a lot of it is our own fault, because when we are put into that box, we tend to stay away from any other groups. We tend to, and this is no insult to any socials being held by any YR groups in the state, in the country, because it's largely the same as far as I can tell across all these borders. But we tend to attract our own. We don't try super duper hard to go outside of our comfort zones and talk to people who might be apolitical, or who might be Democrats for a billion years. And there's some people out there who've never met a Republican, let alone know what we stand for, and that's really, really depressing. And that's not their fault. It's our fault, because we don't go and we don't make sure that message is heard. I mean, Katie, you live in Rahway. Rahway, it's people are shocked that there are any Republicans there, but there are a lot of Republicans there in Rahway.
I feel like by nature people are like Democrats until they've heard another message.
Well, I mean, it's culturally. There's. I said this at the first anniversary thing, is that there are social consequences for being a conservative or a Republican. It's not. I wasn't joking about it. It's an actual truth. It is legitimately difficult to, say that, hey, I'm a Republican, and not get funky stares, and not get sort of, you really, why? That's awful. You're a bad person. There's that sort of, for whatever reason, association, and when you have some seriously crazy stuff that's happening at the national level right now, that reflects poorly on Republicans in general, whether it's Marco Rubio calling names, which I would argue that he didn't start that fight, but when you have that kind of an environment that we have right now on the national scale, it makes it even harder for somebody on a local level in their group of friends to let their friends who are not political know what your viewpoints are on topics, because if it comes out that you're a Republican, then that suddenly things shift. People look at you different, and maybe they don't trust you as much. Maybe they think you're a bad person, some kind of evil. I don't know. It's weird. We have lost that kind of neutral moral status. For some reason, we are aligned to lawful evil instead of neutral good. Or I'm sorry, lawful neutral, to use the D&D terminology.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's tough. I mean, fist pump from Vincent on the D&D terminology. Is that what
I
it was?
appreciate a D&D reference, especially in a political discussion.
When people are obsessed with all those personality tests. Oh my goodness, I'm trying to think of what it's called, the INTJ, INF, or whatever it is.
The Myers-Briggs.
Myers-Briggs, that's what it is. All it is just, it's a character sheet.
No, yeah.
That you fill out. But and maybe that's surprising to people. Maybe people don't really realize that there are Republicans who know what Dungeons and Dragons is and have played or, care about that sort of stuff. Another big problem that we have is that we aren't really multi-layered people, or our appearance in.
I think that's the key.
So feel free to jump into this, but certainly when we focus on issues, we tend to be so into the facts and into the minutia that we do not give proper stories, and that we probably could use a whole lot more culture in our messaging approaches, and we don't do that.
I entirely agree with JD on that. I mean, the other day I watch all types of shows. I'll say that flat out, that I like to watch everything because I like to see that, even if I disagree with it. For instance, I'll watch John Oliver. Yeah. But the other night I was watching Samantha Bee, and wow, she's really gone on the left wing rail, and she was a little more moderate on the Daily Show, but she was still always leftist. But it's interesting how the perception, and how we're perceived as this party of, white old men, yet on the stage, the only white old man really left is Donald Trump. Ironically.
And on average, if you want to calculate oldness and whiteness, I mean, the Democrats have us beat out by a huge level. When your combined age is your average age of a candidate is 71.
You're right.
And the diversity is white New Yorker.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like
white Vermonter, white New Yorker.
Well, Bernie Sanders came from New York, and Hillary, she's not from New York, but
she might as well be.
Carpetbagger. Yes. Carpetbagger up in as senator from New York by way of Arkansas, by way of D.C. really. But
I think that point was important. It's we allow ourselves to get marginalized by getting bullied like that, and the answer back isn't to bully back. No. The answer back is to say to people, and this is what I would say if I were on Samantha Bee's show. Firstly, I would ask for the unedited tape so I could put out the whole thing. But second, and I wouldn't do it without doing that. Yeah. But my second thing would be to fight back against that. Is to basically say, that's a funny show, But again, like, nice job. That's a funny show. But here's why you're wrong, and how can you be for big government? Traditionally, comedians and the people who are always they were always the anti-government, always against, when you go back through historical times, they always were. You have the unpopular position. I have the moral high ground on this because of that.
I mean, I guess it gets a little bit harder when you're having to cite like Voltaire as your comedians who are anti-government. Yes. It's been a while. Well, it's been quite a while.
Well, let's even go back to George Carlin, who was a leftist, but an anti-government leftist in many ways.
Or certainly one that was interested in the First Amendment. Yes. Certainly one that there should be limited amount of censorship from the government. It should be about what the market decides. Yes. And when we say what the market decides, it's really, what is the market? It's just people. Yep. It's people making their own choices and determining for themselves whether or not they appreciate the kind of morality that's shown on girls or the kind of morality that's shown on blue bloods. Mm-hmm. And which show is more successful and which one is less and whatever. Yeah. Of course, in order to make those cultural references that I did, you kind of have to watch Blue Bloods and Girls. Yeah. I've done both. I'm a bigger fan of Blue Bloods. But
Sadly, I have too.
that's because I'm not a fan of Lena Dunham, or her comedy is kind of lacking in my opinion. But I've seen it, and I care to use that kind of cultural reference, and that's something that we don't do. We don't use those kind of cultural references. We're kind of bland, and would rather cite de Tocqueville. Nobody knows who. Do you know who de Tocqueville is? No, nobody knows
Alexis
who de Tocqueville.
Yeah, no.
No, you're not going to find you're not going to find very many people who've read Bastiat in average conversation.
I mean, you go even more modern. Go Mises or Hayek, and those are the modern authors.
I mean, how many people know who Robert Reich is?
Yeah,
you can pick him out of the lineup.
And I think the important thing is it's not a remark on people being out of the know or being too. No. And that's not the argument we're making.
No, this is not a. I'm sorry, I just want to interrupt real briefly here. This is not about uninformed or unintelligent voters. It is about, as a proponent of the free market, as a proponent of capitalism, something that I'm very attached to is the idea of specialization. And when you think about how pencils, that's the classic example is how a pencil gets made, how many different people go into that process.
Very good point.
The division of labor. There are very few people whose job it is to pay super close attention to Bastiat, and we can make fun of people who are talking about women's studies and lesbian basket weaving or whatever the ridiculous college degrees are. But to the same extent, we don't realize how into the weeds we get into our own stuff. Certainly, we see value in it. I would think that from the opposite side, the opposite perspective, they see very little worth in free market economics. Probably about as little as we see in advanced feminist studies. So,
I think we can. That idea is, I think, an important idea to the book. Is that, and I think this is where, as conservatives and libertarians, we fall off the rails. And I think the left has a tendency to do it as well. But it works for the left. Is that they treat their voter as dumb. And I think conservatives and libertarians sometimes do that too often. You mean you haven't read Mises? You must be dumb, but I'm going to be honest. I'm reading the audiobook or listening to the audiobook of Mises on socialism, and man, I agree with everything he's saying, but he is boring.
Yeah.
I'm not going to deny it. I don't expect you to have read Mises. So I think the important part is we have to treat and especially from a libertarian personal responsibility viewpoint, a conservative viewpoint, we have to treat our voters as if they are the smartest people. And a collection of individuals that are put into government are going to be the least smart for that one person. They might be the smartest for that whole group. They're not going to be the smartest for you. Everyone has individual needs.
That's how representation works. I mean, it's not the best, or it's not the perfect system of government, but it's the best that we have.
The best we have currently.
Yeah. So that's something that we don't quite talk about enough, and we get angry. We get super duper angry when a single representative doesn't vote the way that we want. We get so mad.
But it always kills me, and I, even though I'm a little more libertarian than most, and I'm probably a little less towards the moderate, we have to remember that the only person who's going to agree with us 100%. Is us. 100% is us.
That's not even true, because I'm not going to agree with my personal beliefs versus the beliefs that I would present and adhere to as a candidate are not the same as my personal beliefs. It's just not. It's not going to happen.
That's fair.
And I want to represent. If my job is to represent a set of people, especially that's something else that people don't quite get, is that I'm representing this whole swath of people. There's going to be a large part that I myself am making the decision for, but I also have to keep in mind the will of the people who I'm representing.
Or you wouldn't get elected.
No, it's we talk about getting elected as if that's the the means.
Oh yeah, I don't mean it that way.
It's about actually fulfilling your duty, your job
Yes.
as a representative, as whether it's a council person or president. There are people that you have to look out for, and people whose wishes that you have to keep in mind.
No, I mean
to some extent.
I meant in the sense that it's a check on the individual, and a good check.
Yeah.
That's why we vote. That's
Exactly.
an important part. But I think that too often we call people stupid, and it really, really irritates me every time I hear it, because I think the plumber or the exterminator that comes, they're no more stupid than the PhD at Harvard.
I can tell you that the exterminator knows a whole lot more about certain things than I know about.
Division of labor.
Division of labor. I
Yeah.
mean, it's and that's another problem that we have, is that we have people who preach this stuff and who say this stuff, but who don't actually believe it when it comes to putting it into practice.
That's a great point.
And they can say all of these things, and then when it comes time to actually realize that you need to put this into practice, that it's worth it to acknowledge people's specializations, to acknowledge the things that they are good at. And that's one of the big draws to me for conservatism is just how empowering the individual it is. How for empowering the individual it is, which is not the case for the Democrats.
And that links back perfectly to the conservative heart, because an important part of it is that the person who's in Starbucks, they're equally as important. So the CEO, they may have different functions, and it may be different amounts of money that go, or different benefits that go. But the important part is everyone has a role to play. And if you're not happy with your role, you can keep moving up and moving up. If you're happy with your role and you want to be a manager at a restaurant, or you want to be a manager at Starbucks, it's great, because you might be focused on your family, and that's fine. That's a great thing. That freedom choice is what Arthur Brooks, I think, really talks about. I think is just powerful.
I actually, funny. I don't mention these guys near enough as I should. It's kind of a weird thing being the chair of the Young Republicans. I like to be very careful about the stuff that I share on our page, because I don't want to share things that are not representative of the club, and not that I feel ashamed at all about the people I'm going to mention. I love them; they're my favorites, some of my favorite people. But I like to be very protective about what goes up on our stuff. I'm very conservative about what goes up on our pages. Keep it generally to the stuff that we're doing. He says as the coffee grinders all go off at the same time. No, but I'm great friends with this group from Colorado called the Party of Choice. And if you think of the word choice, you might think, oh, these are pro-abortion.
Yeah.
No, that's not the case at all. What the Party of Choice is about is they want to control their own lives, not yours. And that's a big focus, and I think that's something that in the Republican Party, that is a tenet of our core beliefs. That's something that we should constantly remember, keep in our minds at all times, is that really the person that I want to control is me.
Yes.
I want to have the choice, all the choices, all the options available to me to do what I need to do to be a successful, fulfilled person. And I don't want to stumble or trample on anybody else's rights or desires in the process. So, and that's a part of the Constitution. We should, going back to the Ninth Amendment, it's a document that reminds us that, hey, any rights that are not written down here are the people's rights. Just because this is not an exhaustive list, they're there. If it's not mentioned here, they're there.
Right.
So we need to be that party, the party of the Ninth Amendment,
Party of choice.
Party of choice, exactly. I absolutely will do this. I'll post a video of theirs onto the Facebook page tomorrow, just because it's really wonderful, and it's something that is unifying for I think a lot of factions within the GOP, within the conservative movement, and that's something that we desperately need. But it's something here in Union County, in particular, that I think we have, is that, we have very diverse viewpoints when it comes to, especially things like foreign policy. I think within the YRs alone, social issues to be sure as well. But we understand and respect each other. We realize that if we want to get what we want to get done, we agree more often than we disagree. And it comes from a shared starting point, and I think that starting point is that, hey, I want to be able to control my own life. It's not about controlling anybody else's. But I think that falls into line with a lot of what Arthur Brooks has to say in the book.
I agree. Katie, you have
anything
you want to add? You don't have to.
Yeah, don't feel pressured.
Don't feel
here.
pressured to do it.
This is just a fun conversation.
I just thought I would extend it.
Thank you.
Actually, we're about at we're not out yet. We have like 10 minutes until the hour's up. Maybe some final thoughts.
Sure. So I think my final thoughts are, I think JD I think he did, in this case, perfectly mention why we have the moral high ground. We believe that you're the smarter person than the government is for you, because the government can't tailor things. So all it can do is do bulky, big solutions for you. So we're the party of choice. I really love that slogan. And I think that's how more Republicans really need to get out there and get that message out. And I think JD did an excellent job of saying that. And I think that's an important part of the book, is that we are the morally superior when it comes to our ideas, but we're not morally superior when it comes to the individual.
And when it comes to that whole morally superior bit, we're talking about our solutions. We're not talking about what we're looking to achieve. We're looking for the exact same outcome.
Yes.
Really is that we want people to succeed.
Yeah.
We want people to be free.
Yeah.
We want people to be able to have fulfilling lives, and that's something that the book talks a lot more about than we've really approached in this discussion. But again, we've had an hour. The book is, I think it's 9 hours when it's read.
Highly recommend reading the book.
Oh, and that's we're not sponsored or anything, but if you want, you can listen to the book on audible.com using a free subscription, and then cancel right there.
Yeah.
I always give them a month or two, just because I like using Audible, and maybe we'll get a sponsor sometime in the future if we do this a lot more. No, it's definitely worth the listen, worth the download. Actually maybe let me just really quick leaf through to the end, because the thing that I really, here we go. He's got a couple of I should say seven habits of highly effective conservatives. And I just want to go through these real quick, just because I think it's an important part of the book. Be a moralist. Number one, we've definitely discussed that. Fight for the people, not against things. That's another thing that we've talked about. Get happy, which maybe we didn't discuss quite enough, but I think that sort of falls under the whole use cultural references, guys. Don't be so boring. Steal all the best arguments. That's not something that we delved into that much during this discussion, but it's something that chapter is well worth reading. And I guess that's sort of one of the bonus things about having this podcast, is that hopefully people will be inspired to read the book after this. That's something that you need to take a look at. Go where you're not welcome. Say it in 30 seconds. we didn't quite say it in 30 seconds here, but party of choice says it in 30 seconds, says it in a minute. And that is, and they definitely steal the best arguments. They steal the best words. Choice is a great word that we've allowed to go to, other people. And 7, break your bad habits. And in a lot of ways, that's what we're trying to discuss here, is how to break our bad habits as a party and develop some new good ones. And maybe the next time that we do a book club, we'll pick a different part of Starbucks to hold it, or maybe we'll do it someplace else, maybe at Barnes & Noble or something.
Or in perhaps a different day might work.
Perhaps a different day, yes. We do want more people to come out to these things, but I was very happy with this discussion. I was really glad that I was able to, come out to this. Vincent, I have to give you all the credit because you are the one who decided that this is something that we should do. So you picked out a time, and we're here and we're doing it. We're going to, I'm sure, post in the when this video goes up, podcast, whatever, goes up. There's no video. I'm just gonna put this up and have a generic picture or whatever on our YouTube, just so that people can access it. But in our super secret group, we'll put up a poll if that's okay with you, to see what we want for the next book.
In 2 months is what we're going to go for.
2 months.
Shoot for a 2 month cycle.
2 months is a good idea. Plus, it gives people a lot of time to read whatever our next book that we pick is, and and it gives us time to sort of get everybody hyped up for the next edition of the book club. So, I guess on behalf of the book club, I would like to and Vincent and Katie, I would like to say thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to check us out on Facebook at Facebook/UCNJYRF, on Twitter at UCNJYRF, and democracy.com/UCNJYRF for all of your Union County Young Republican needs. And we hope to hear from you guys. We hope to get some nice feedback from this, and we hope that you guys check out The Conservative Heart by Arthur Brooks. All right.
We'll reconvene in May.
In May. Awesome. All right, say goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.